please mute yourself so that we can begin this session. It is very important to understand emotional intelligence is not the opposite of intelligence. It is not a triumph of heart over head. It is a unique intersection of both. These are the words of David Caruso, and I find these words very relevant and apt. I first learned about emotional intelligence during one of my early leadership trainings. The more I learned about emotional intelligence, the more I learned to appreciate it. One simple definition of emotional intelligence is the ability to identify, assess, and control the emotions of oneself, of others, and of groups. This is one of the most pertinent aspects of personal effectiveness. FLO endeavors to equip and empower women with holistic tools for growth, impact, and effectiveness. Today, we have with us Dr. Neharika Vohra, Professor IIM Ahmedabad, who will be taking us through this concept and various aspects of emotional intelligence and why is it crucial for women leaders to develop the same. Dr. Vohra is a specialist in behavioral science and currently working as professor in organizational behavior area at IIM Ahmedabad. She holds extensive experience with the corporate sector and non-profits as an independent director, consultant, coach, and mentor. She has been involved in delivering leadership training for a large number of top companies, educational institutions, and has published over 700 peer-reviewed research papers in top international and national journals and authored 3 books. She's also served as founding vice chancellor of Delhi Skill and Entrepreneurship University, a state university formed as an act of Delhi state. Today's session, I'm aware, will answer a lot of our queries and augment our self-awareness about emotional intelligence. Thank you, Ms. Vohra, for gracing us and accepting our invite. We also have our 39th National President, Jayantiji Dalmia, with us. She's an advisor in Dalmia Brothers Private Limited, one of the oldest and distinguished business houses of India. Besides business interests, Ms. Dalmia is keenly involved in various social activities. She's the founder chairperson of 4 Steps, a research, training and rehabilitation institute for persons with special needs. She is joint managing trustee of Sri Krishna Janmasthan Seva Sansthan, Mathura, a temple of utmost historic and spiritual importance. May I now request Jayantiji to felicitate our distinguished guest with his Virtue Green certificate. Neharika ji, we gift our speakers trees as a mark of contribution towards preserving the environment. We plant trees in their names through the website www.growtrees.com. Can we have the certificate?
That's nice.
Ma'am, you can even locate your tree in this, and what we will do is we'll post it to you.
Great.
So that you receive it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to invite National President Jayanti Dalmia to give her welcome address.
Thank you, Minal. Neharika ji, Minal Jain, past presidents, governing body members, the presidium, and all our FLO members. I found a little shlok to encapsulate today's event. Yam hi na vyathayante te purusham purushar shabha sam dukha sukha dhiram so mrita vyaya kalpate. Shri Krishna tells Arjun, the noblest amongst men, that person who is not affected by happiness and distress, remains steady in both and becomes eligible for liberation. This analytical shloka from the Bhagavad Gita sums up the entire concept of emotional intelligence. Niharika ji, I just like to start with a shlok. So always look for something that kind of encapsulates the topic. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this virtual session on this very, very pertinent topic, which is a critical factor in both our personal and professional lives. The term emotional intelligence was first coined in 1990 by researchers John Mayer and Peter Salovey, but was later popularized by psychologist Daniel Goleman. Goldman highlighted the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership, telling the Harvard Business Review, the most effective leaders are all alike in one crucial way. They all have a high degree of what has come to be known as emotional intelligence. Some of the most successful and influential people in history have had high EQs, such as Martin Luther King Jr., Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill, and Warren Buffett. Emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive, interpret, demonstrate, control, evaluate, and use emotions to communicate with and relate to others effectively and constructively. And some experts also say that it is more important than IQ for success in life. Today we have with us Dr. Neharika Vohra, professor in the Organizational Behaviour area at IIM Ahmedabad. Dr. Vohra is passionate about improving quality and improving access to education. She observes people and thinks about ways in which people can reach their potential. Fiki Ladies Organization believes in holistic growth and development of existing women entrepreneurs and potential entrepreneurs so that they can take well-informed decisions and become equal contributors to the nation's economy. Since its inception in 1983, FLO has been working towards strengthening, enabling, and empowering women across India. This year, my focus is on empowering women with special emphasis on transforming women's participation in India's growth trajectory. Every initiative and every project that we have taken has been driven by a goal of creating sustainable economic possibilities for women at all levels. In recent times, the definition of leadership has been changing, and an emphasis on emotional intelligence is also increasing. It has become recognized for its correlation to success in work and personal life, to motivation, and to overall well-being. Which is why we have put together this exclusive session for our members. With our motto, Power to Empower, FLO believes in holistic empowerment of our members. In the increasingly diverse world we live in, EQ is a necessary tool for providing social and economic solutions to people of vastly different circumstances and need. I am sure this session will be immensely beneficial for each one of us. And thank you, Dr. Vohra, for giving us your valuable time and helping us gain greater awareness and about the people and situations and self-awareness around us. I would really like to thank GB member Minal Jain for making this possible. Thank you so much, Minal.
Come on, yeah, Jayanti, that's fine. You're the inspiration behind us for us to get to know such speakers, eminent speakers like Dr. Vohra.
Thank you, Minal. Shell, you can take over now. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Jayanti. Over to you, Neharika ji. Let's get through the journey of emotional intelligence with you. How it has helped me, and I'm sure it will help everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jayanti ji, for the amazing shloka. I don't understand it very much, but maybe if you could share it, we could look up the meaning and work on it.
Yes,
and
sure.
Thank you, Minal, also for the nice quote that you've put in. And I think they really kind of summarize some of the things that I'm going to talk about. I am assuming there are many of us here, about 125 of us here, who are all, interested in the question of emotional intelligence for various reasons. I'm going to start off by first looking at, let us say, and I'm just going to share my screen, and we will look at why and what we are. Okay, I think can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
I think there are many people across the world who have spoken about this, but I find this quote of Lao Tzu important. Um, while it's always important to be intelligent, I think it is very, very important, more important to be wiser. And to be wise is to have power, true power. And as the quote says, that knowing others is intelligence, while knowing yourself is true wisdom. And mastering others is strength, while mastering yourself is true power. Yeah. And I think, not that in the next 1 hour I'm going to teach you all of this, but would lead you to have a discussion on why and how maybe some of this could make sense for all of us. Yeah. So if I go forward, I think we all have questions on this, on such why and hows. For example, why some people just seem to have a gift for living well. Why the smartest kid in the class will probably not end up the richest. Why we like some people virtually on site or distrust others. Why some people remain buoyant in terms of trouble, and while others, just sink even at the sight of a problem. What qualities of the mind or spirit determines who succeeds, right? How to be a good change manager, how to be attractive to other people, how to communicate your ideas. And these are really, while these seem maybe look like very simple questions, but I think all of you would agree with me that these are questions that we possibly all have at least have asked sometimes. We may or may not have answers to these. We may or may not really know why it is true for somebody and not true for the other. And I think from what I'm going to argue with you today is that at the heart of possibly answering some of these questions, or if I were to go through each question and try answering them, a common factor would be the fact that how emotionally intelligent you are. How are you able to look at, understand what you're feeling and the other is feeling? And the ability for you and me to, continue relationships despite what gets thrown to us, yeah, is at the heart of emotional intelligence. So if we want to build it, if we agree that this is important, I think the question then comes, how come for all our life, while emotional intelligence might be so important, how for all our life we have actually been told that to be emotional is to be weak. To be emotional is like having a problem, right? So those are some of the questions that we are really working with. And we want to understand how come there is such a disconnect between what the world thinks about emotions on one hand, and on the other, what research, experience, all of us have felt that at the end of the day, it is the feelings that matter, my ability to handle my feelings, that is most important. And all I'm going to do is try to help each one of you to maybe just understand what to be emotionally intelligent is. And I think, in October 1995, there is Times magazine actually put this on the cover page. We all know that what gets on the Times magazine cover is often seen as something that is an important conversation, an important person. There was one time, rather than putting the picture of a person, they actually ended up putting the picture, or just saying, what's your EQ? That is the kind of importance it has been awarded. And yet, for many of us, there is a huge amount of not knowing what it is to be emotionally intelligent. And there is a huge amount of even disowning our feelings. And because we disown them, we possibly throw the baby with the bathwater, because every feeling, as I'm going to explain to you, actually comes because there is something in the environment that needs our attention. The feeling is just a marker. It is just a data that is being thrown at me to say there is something in the environment that you need to pay attention to. And yet, while it is such an important aspect for survival, we still end up ignoring it and doing many other things with it which are not productive. I think Warren Bennis writes beautifully on becoming a leader. He also says, in the fields I have studied, emotional intelligence is much more powerful than IQ in determining who emerges as a leader. IQ is a threshold skill. Please do not get me wrong. At no point of time, I'm going to make the claim that IQ is not important. In fact, if I look at research in organizational behavior, we always say that the general intelligence of a person has a huge amount of predictability in success at job, right? So we are not talking about that you don't need to be intelligent. Of course, there is a room for developing and exercising your leadership, but at certain levels in the workplace, IQ becomes a threshold competence. Everybody has to have it. You need it, but it doesn't make you a star. But your emotional intelligence, your ability to deal and answer the kind of questions we spoke about, are what really makes you a star. And therefore, at the end of the day, what we're saying is, we're not trying in any way to argue that emotional intelligence is the only skill that is required for success. All we are saying is, it's one at a certain level at your job, which can actually differentiate between a good performer and a star performer. And therefore, it's important that we look at what does it mean to be emotionally intelligent. And don't get me wrong, emotional intelligence is not something only that distinguishes or contributes in our work life. Actually, emotional intelligence is something that helps us both at work and in our personal relationships. I don't come as a human being. Human beings are not designed to be a different being at the workplace and a different being at the at home. Which is the same person. If I am emotionally intelligent at work, I'm also likely to be emotionally intelligent at home. If I'm emotionally intelligent at home, I'm also likely to take it to my workplace in exactly the same way. So very quickly, yeah, if just for the sake of putting some things in place, is what are emotions? Right? It's a piece of information that tells you something about how you are experiencing the world. You meet somebody and you instantly have a reaction to them. You don't like them. That is in a way, there is an emotion that is getting arising in your body, which is telling you, there's something about this person that I can't put my finger on. I don't have all the data, but it just tells me that I can't really relate to this person. And if I pay attention to that, I will look further into figuring out what is happening. And with that, I might also be able to say, okay, how do I really respond to this person? I don't like them. They're part of my job. I need to talk to them. I need to figure out, I need to ring fence myself. And yet I'm not going to avoid them. I'm not going to tell them, sorry, I don't want to talk to you because I don't feel comfortable about you. But I understand something within me which tells me that there is something off. It's data. And that information I use to help me navigate the situation in the best possible way. So when I'm emotionally intelligent, I pay attention to this signaling system that the physiology has given us, which constantly gives us signals as to what how I'm responding to this person. I might have some false signals, like for everything, right? I mean, really, there may be nothing to worry. There may be nothing to be concerned about about this person, but yet with that, the presence of the signal heightens my response or heightens my attention to what needs to be done, rather than being overtaken by it at some point of time, because the body feels she's not paying attention, and therefore let me now take charge and start to do something about it. So rather than the emotion taking charge of you, being emotionally intelligent is where you take charge of the emotion. You take charge of what am I feeling, what is the lesson, and what can I do about it at this point of time. Emotions are also one common thing, right? Across all nations, all genders, all ages, all professions. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that emotions are not something that are specific to a group of people, right? It's universal. It's a gift of evolution to us to help us survive, and therefore it is universal. I may be a different color, I may speak a different kind of a language, I might be a different gender, but the fact is that the nature's endowed every one of us with the same signaling system. So it helps us form a sense of community. I always use this example of 20 years ago, I was in China, walking around a city, and everybody looked different and spoke a language that I didn't speak. Yeah. And they didn't speak the language I spoke. And therefore I was feeling very lost, sometimes feeling very, lonely. And there was a little child who was walking around and pranking and all of that, very cute. And I smiled at the child, because the child made me happy. And the moment I smiled at the child, the mother of the child smiled back at me. Yeah, the fact that I expressed my emotion connected the two of us. We did not have a language, but the immediate sense of loneliness was gone. The immediate sense of being an alien was gone, because the child evoked a response, a feeling, and that feeling, when expressed, led to a certain communication and a connection with a complete stranger. And it was not just that mother who smiled at me, but there were other people who, when they saw the ice thaw between these two people, also started reacting and responding to me. And it's almost like a film. I don't have a recording of it, but it's almost like a film in my head whenever I think of it, how that triggered a complete dominoes effect of me standing in that place completely alone, feeling alien, and then the feeling transformed. That is the power of emotions. We often say our beliefs divide us, our emotions unite us. My belief from you could be different, and therefore from my head I could say, oh, I can't really talk to her, I can't really be communicating with her. But our emotions for the same event or the same incident can in fact unite us. And therefore, to understand the power of emotions becomes important. The other interesting thing is that all emotions are experienced internally. It's in my body that I will face emotions, I will feel it, because it is a physiological reaction. It is my brain responding to the 40,000 stimuli that are constantly in the environment, and I picking something that my body thinks it needs to react to or needs me to be attentive to, and the body changes to tell me, to signal to me that there's a feeling. However, whatever I feel internally is pretty much known to me, other than sometimes my facial expressions and so on and so forth. And they can only be expressed externally. And therefore, there is a certain level of dichotomy of what I feel and how I express, which needs to be also part of the conversation, right? And as I've already said, because it's a signal, it's a data, right? It's a form of energy, and it can actually provide motivation. So, you know, when I'm if I love teaching, yeah, I could be really tired, and yet if I stand up and I teach for 2 hours, there is an emotion that gets generated. It's an emotion of happiness, it's an emotion of accomplishment, and so on and so forth, which, no matter however tired I am, it fills me with motivation. And that motivation can then take me to the next and to the next job. So when I'm emotionally intelligent, I recognize the power of what it does to be in situations or put ourselves in situations which give us energy, which fill us with energy. It is never to say that you will always be able to do everything that makes you happy. That's not the point. That you will always have a job where every part of your job you love. There is every time, even in your best loved job, there are going to be parts of the job that are not going to be motivating. Nobody in the world likes to get up and go and fire some 20 people because now we can't afford you. Yeah, it is not going to motivate you. But the fact is that you do other things at the job which motivate you, which give you the energy to do some things that you don't like. And so again, as when I'm emotionally intelligent, I recognize when my tank is starting to get empty, and I go out and seek some of those situations, some of those incidents, some of those experiences which actually fill me with a positive energy. So being emotionally intelligent is recognizing what fills your tank when your tank is empty, and what you need to do to get that tank full. And again, these might seem like, you know, how do I do that? But really, I mean, that is the whole point of, you know, I started with Lao Tzu. Knowing yourself is wisdom. It's a strength. And so you can only do that when you start to become more aware of yourself and more accepting of yourself. I can't say it is not a good thing. People, it happens in my kind of a job, you know, where I'm surrounded by people who are constantly doing intellectual work. And let us say for a moment that I find that my filling of my tank comes from, you know, going for a walk and watching a movie. And I can't then judge myself and say, I'm not intellectual enough, because how can I be only motivated by this? I don't judge myself. I accept the fact that I can do really serious intellectual work, but when I want my tank filled up, I possibly need to go for a walk and I need to go watch a movie, because that fills me up in a certain way. Yeah, there's no judging, there's no right or wrong, there's acceptance, and then the courage to do it in spite of what the world tells you how you should be. Yeah, and what should be right for you and what should not be. Again, our emotions, our primary emotions are unconsciously generated. We don't, you know, I don't have so much control over when will I feel upset, when will I feel sad, when will I feel scared. I possibly don't have all that much control, because all of this is linked to survival. But there is also a process, and these are dangerous, when I feel something, I create a story around what I feel, and I store that story in my head. And then at another point of time, whenever I remember that story, I again experience those emotions. Now, those are consciously generated emotions. And sometimes they have nothing to do with reality because they are part of my stored story, a story that serves my function, my purpose, or a story that I have told to be, to match with what the world tells me. And that story, when told over and over again, can create what are called secondary consciously generated emotions. And sometimes they can be very far from how I really feel in that situation. And again, I'll give you an example, and I'm sure many of us would have been through that situation. And I'm giving you an example from home. Let's say the first time you went to your, or the first few times you went to your in-laws' place, you did not feel welcomed. Yeah, for whatever reason, you didn't feel welcomed, you felt sad about it, you felt judged because of it, and so on and so forth. And then, the situation changes. But you have told that story to yourself. They don't really like me, they don't really value me, they don't really care for me, and so on and so forth. And then, maybe 6 months later or a year later, I go there and everybody seems happy, but I have a story that I have stored, and that stored story tells me they don't like me, they're not really wanting me, they're not interested in me, and I'm not really listening or paying attention to what I'm feeling in the moment. I am now going to operate from there. So somebody gives me a broad smile and says, I'm really happy to see you, and my head says, are you? Yeah, and that will create a dissonance, because that person is saying, look, I'm opening my heart to speak to her, and she seems to be very guarded, or she does not seem to respond in the same way. And then I wonder why that person today was very friendly, but the next time I went the week later, she seemed very reserved. And I'm like, this reserved self is her real self, and that one moment, one time when she was very open was just a facade. And the reality is that I am the one who's possibly bringing on some of that reality. So what I'm saying is emotions are as much conscious as well as unconscious. It is better to be in the moment than to depend on our secondary manufactured emotions, because those may not really represent what is happening in the here and now. And really, emotions by definition are something that give you a signal of the here and now. And if I'm not looking at the here and now, and I'm only looking at the there and then, and I'm only going to rely on the story I told about the there and then not only do I come across as cold or somebody who's not really, available, but I'm also harming myself, because in the present moment, I have a way to repair the relationship or build the relationship, and all I'm going by is a past construction. And sometimes, for many of us, while emotions are universal, the way we will express it, the way we will feel it itself can get modified by the socialization process. The display rules across cultures are different. And I give this example, you might have heard this example earlier from me, but if you haven't, I'll share it again, is, I have been a good student pretty much all my life. So in my +2 exam, I had stood first class third in the exam at the university level. This was at the time when you didn't do it at school, you actually did your +2 at the university level. and lived in a small town, in a township where everybody knew everybody. So my result was declared. I was very happy. I was going to go meet a friend, and I'm walking down the lane, going to my friend's place, and an aunt, one of the neighbor auntie, calls me. She sees me, she calls me, and she says, "What was your result?" So I said whatever to her. And what she heard was I had got 3rd division, because maybe I said it in a way that I said it, or what she heard, but what she heard was that I'd got a 3rd division. An hour later, I come home. So she's already visited my mother by this time. She has expressed her, my God, she was such a good student. How come she got a 3rd division, blah, blah, blah. And my mother said, "No, wo to first class 3rd thi." And then, I come home. My mother says, "Oh, this auntie had come. This is what she told." And it's very good. It's good to be modest. It's good not to show off to people. It is good that you said it the way you said it, because at the end of the day, it's better for them to figure out your first class 3rd than your 3rd division, right? And what the lesson, the socialization process is, then don't express what you feel the way you feel it. Yeah, be modest, be all of that. Even to date, after I've done so much work on myself, to express real happiness, there is a barrier. There's some actual modification that has happened. Yeah, I can express sadness, I can express anger, but to express real happiness is a difficult process, even though I have been doing this work for many years now to kind of overcome my socialization process. So all I'm trying to say is that emotional intelligence, our expression of emotion, can actually get changed by what gets told to us and how it is told to us. And at some point, I think all of us need to start to do work on it if I really want to be authentic, to express how I feel. And again, I'm going to go ahead and say this, the fact that the point is not to say that you have to always be a walking billboard of your emotions. If you're feeling happy, I'm happy. If I'm sad, I'm sad. That's not the point. But the point is, can I fully feel it in myself, and then be intelligent enough to choose how I'm going to express it in this situation, right? Because then I have power over how I want to say it, rather than the other way around, where the emotion takes charge of how I want to say it. Yeah. And I think it's very important for us to recognize that emotions are neither good nor bad. They just are. Yeah. They are a signal. They are data. They help us in survival. They are important aspects of my being in this world. I don't need to judge them. I don't need to control them. I don't need to hide them. I don't need to store them. I don't need others to not know it, because, guess what? You feel happy, I feel happy. I feel scared, you feel scared. Everyone else feels angry, I feel angry. They're universal. There is nobody in this room or in this world who is spared of the noblest, within quotes, of emotions and the meanest of emotions. We've all felt jealous. We've all felt angry. We've all felt guilty. We've all felt everything, irrespective of who we are. So I think the most important thing is to start removing judgment around emotion. They're neither good, they're not bad, they're not to be controlled, they're not to be stored, they're not to be ignored, they're not to be hidden, they're not to be displaced. They just have to be felt. And once we feel them, please remember that we as human beings are the only living organisms in this entire universe who have a well-developed brain, which is more than what a chimpanzee or a gorilla or a cat or a rat or a dog has. Yeah, where they can feel, and they can only be able to respond from that feeling part. Humans we have much, a large part of our brain has been developed whose job is to feel and then make a decision how to respond to it. So we all have the hardware to tell us what to do with that emotion. Yeah. To really, give it out to the person at this point of time, to hold it, to withdraw at this moment, come back at a later time, to be sarcastic, to keep quiet, and all of that. So you, as an emotionally intelligent person, will choose how you will respond given what the situation needs. Yeah, there are times, at least in my last 2 years as leading a university, when I could, I would be happiest if I could give my choicest of my words to the person sitting in front of me, because they're riling me, they're not being reasonable, they're not doing what I want them to do, and they can't see my reason. And yet I know that in my position, if I do that, I lose that person forever. Yeah. So while I feel all of that, I don't diminish what I feel, and I eat it, I pause, and then I say, do you really think this is what you want to do? In the most gravest voice that I can, so that the person understands that they don't have my approval, but I'm not finishing them at this point of time. And imagine if this is a secretary who sits in front of you, an IS officer, senior IS officer, who you could use whatever words you want to, but if you did, not only would you lose your relationship with them, but you would also build a reputation where you will not be welcomed into any conversation, irrespective of what it is. So you recognize that there is possibly a way to say it, not to say, oh, she's a secretary or he's a secretary, so I can't really say anything to them. But to recognize that there's a way to say it in a way that my message can go, and yet I'm not, just downloading it on somebody. And actually in the process, losing my own reputation and my own credibility in the situation. So just to summarize, emotions are data that help us to understand ourselves and others. They are for making decisions, they are for initiating action, and they are for protecting us. Yeah. So why would I not? This is something like a kavach, Karan's kavach. And why will I actually not use this kavach that is given to me? And why would I be as unwise as Karan to give it away in the morning to somebody who comes to beg for it? Because it is my principle to give whatever, somebody begs for, and in the morning especially. Yeah, this is from Mahabharata story. So my point is, this is us, this is our kavach. Yeah, can I use it to protect me, to help me to work through difficult situations, to work through the best of the situations, so that at that point of time I can build relationships, I can build the best of what is needed in the situation. Aristotle said this many years ago, when he says anybody can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, and to the right degree, and at the right time, and for the right purpose, in the right way, that is not within everybody's power, and it is not easy. But the whole point is, I can feel, and you can replace this with all emotions. Yeah, you can be sad, you can be angry, you can be happy, you can be scared. That is universal, that is there. But to express it in the best possible way, that my relationship and my goal gets taken forward, is a completely different story. And that, I think, is what we really mean by emotional intelligence. And I think Daniel Siegel said this beautifully when he said that the denial of emotion is not the only danger Sorry, I can't read this because there's just too many messages here. We face when they, when we rely too heavily on our left brain. We can also become too literal, leaving us without a sense of perspective, where we miss the meaning that comes from putting things in context. And again, when I pay attention to what I feel, I also pay attention to the context in which this is coming from me. And again, I think the human brain is not, the speciality of it is not to be unidimensional. The speciality of it is to be multidimensional. The fact that it can think, it can feel, it can be logical, and it can look at subjective values, it can be concrete, and it can be abstract. And when I only develop one part of my brain and leave out the other, I'm again diminishing my ability, my response to various situations. And what we're saying is, as an emotionally intelligent person, why would you want to diminish that? Okay, what happened? So I think I have already said this, that EQ is important because it's just the one that is required for all of this. Yeah. And because I have been saying so much on what emotional intelligence is, let me also tell you what it is not. It is not being nice all the time. Women very often make this assumption to be emotionally intelligent is to be super nice to everybody at all times. No. Yeah, it's not about being super nice. It is about being authentic. It is about recognizing what I'm feeling. It is honoring and responding with the emotion as my reference point. Yeah, it is not about being touchy and feely. Give a hug to this person, touch this person, blah, 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 all of that. That is not emotional intelligence. You could be really not be a touchy-feely person and still be emotionally intelligent. I have heard some of my women colleagues complain about other women colleagues, say, she's so distant. Yeah. And in a way, as if that's not okay, right? If you're a woman and I'm another woman, then you really should be close to me. Nothing like that. Yeah. I'm not saying don't be, but I'm also saying that that's not a prerequisite for being emotionally intelligent. Yeah. It is not about being emotional. It is not about being, happy, sad, angry, upset all the time. That's not what, again, emotional intelligence is. It is about being smart with your emotions. And I think this is an interesting, just a small graph for you all to look at, that at the end of the day, what drives our behavior, whether it is at home or at work, as an entrepreneur or as an individual, it doesn't matter. We're driven by survival, we're driven by safety, and we're driven by connection. And the emotional intelligence helps us to create that safe haven, which says, am I safe? Will I survive in this situation? And when I'm emotionally intelligent, I'm constantly able to build and extend connections rather than sever them, rather than lose them. My skill is in being able to safely, to create that safe haven. So the question that I think our brain constantly works on, what's next and how am I doing, right? We are constantly worried about what is coming at us and am I ready with that? And how am I doing becomes the next question that I need to also look at. And I'm sure you all know this. I'll skip this, but before that, oh, sorry, some of my skills. So we have to realize, and this is just a simple, 2 by 2. In social sciences, we always use 2 by 2, is that there is a joy, anger, fear, and sadness. 4 basic emotions, like the 3 primary colors that we are born with. Yeah, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter what you do. You're likely to feel happy. You are going to survive, and you are going to build connections, and you are going to be safe when you feel all of these 4 emotions, right? And what is interesting is that for humans, nothing ever is as simple. So there is a combination of, for example, joy and fear, right? We have constant emotions, we have complex emotions. So for example, when you choose to go on an adventure sport, go skydiving or paragliding or whatever, you are looking at the thrill that comes out of excitement, which is a combination of joy and fear. Yeah, happiness that you did something, and scared because, my God, what it is to jump from 10,000 feet on a parachute with a person who you know very little about. Yeah, that's so there's fear, there's joy, but the fact is that it creates excitement. Or the fact that many times, yeah, institutions like ours strive to create during alumni meets nostalgia, which is again a combination of joy and sadness. I want you to feel happy to come to the institute. I want you to feel sad for the fact that you spent all these years here and now you can't spend all this time here. And in the nostalgia that gets created, you're likely to be more generous than if you didn't feel nostalgic about coming to the institute. So just giving you examples. Or the fact that sometimes when you are driving and somebody cuts really close to you, you feel anger and fear at the same time. Scared because you could have gotten hurt, angry because how could you be so irresponsible? Put together, you get a feeling of rage. So what I'm trying to say is that while we have 4 basic emotions, just like the 3 primary colors, we have a multitude of emotions that get formed because of the combinations and because of the shades of fear, shades of anger, shades of joy, and the shades of sadness that we feel. And the fact is, excuse me, the fact is that we all have them. And important thing is that as a person, am I able to just feel what I feel? Now, you might think, I mean, what is this? It's so simple. What's wrong with feeling what I feel? Yeah. And I'm going to ask you to pause for a minute and think about how often have you really felt what you have felt, as compared to judging it. How can I feel like this? Or as compared to ignoring it. I don't feel angry. Or as compared to hiding it. Even though I'm feeling really angry, upset with you, I'm not going to show it to you. Yeah. Or the fact that I'm really nervous about this interview and I'm scared and I'm not, but I'm trying just to, you know, I'm way beyond this. I can't feel scared. And so what I'm saying is that while the most logical thing to do with emotion is to feel it as you feel it, but the most rarely done thing is to feel it as you feel it. What we typically do is we hide it, we ignore it, we displace it, we store it. And as a result, what happens is, when I respond, sometimes either my body takes over and says, of course you're scared. Yeah, I was at, doing admission interviews yesterday for IIM Ahmedabad. And there was a student who came in, body language was completely nervous. Asked him, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. Do you need a minute? No, I'm fine, I'm fine. First question asked, and he has a gag response, can't say anything. And so scared, his fear takes over. And while his head tells him that he has to be in charge and in control, but the fact is that for some reason, his fear just takes over. And it's sad, right? So we tell him, please drink some water. And he says, no, I don't need water. Yeah. No, you are feeling very scared. We can see you're very scared. Why don't you just take a moment, drink a sip of water, take a deep breath, and then we'll start the conversation. Took me a while to just convince him to accept that he's feeling scared and he needs to do something if we really want to have this conversation. And all I'm trying to say is, it's written on his face, his body is taking over, he's unable to speak. Better it is for him or for any one of us, and we've all been in these situations, to take a moment and say, I'm really scared. Yeah. And take a deep breath, do whatever it takes for me to get over it, and then get my head to kick in to say, you can address the situation. You're well prepared. Yeah. The fear is a feeling which you can't control, but it's a message to say that you need to do something about it. And so what I'm really saying is, rather than judging, rather than stopping, can I just feel it? I'm not saying, can I just express it? I'm just saying, can I just feel it? Because when I just feel it, I give myself the space and the latitude to actually free up the space, the other part of the brain, to kick in to say, what do I want to do with this? How do I want to respond to this? And when I do that, that thinking is what really makes me more effective. It helps me deal with that situation better. But, we are creatures of habit. If I have learned to suppress it, if I have learned to hide it, if I have learned to put on a brave face and something happens, when something happens, or, put a wide smile when I'm smoldering inside, my first response is going to be doing that. Yeah. And that, when I'm emotionally intelligent, I start to look at the disconnect between what I'm feeling and what I'm expressing. And then to take a moment to say, yes, I'm really angry. This really incenses me. Deep breath, and then to say to the person what needs to be said in a way they will listen to you. Yeah. When I say it in real anger, they don't listen to me. And when I say, you don't make me angry, they say, of course, we know it doesn't make you angry. And they actually know that it's making you angry. And they're just taking a trip on you at that point of time. So again, having that, so it's a matter of practice. It's not easy. Yeah, we're not used to doing this. It is a matter of rewiring ourselves. It is a matter of learning new habits, because if you don't learn them, we can talk about it, you can feel excited about it, but you will not really be able to change it. Yeah. So it is with intention, with mindfulness, that I can learn newer habits which can help me feel, take charge, choose how I want to respond, and then respond to the situation, right? That's what I really want to do at this point of time. And I want to pause share for a moment. Yeah. And I think there are some people who are saying, till what time this call will end? I have another meeting. It's going very good. I think we have time until 5:30. I will go on for another 5 to 7 minutes before I'll complete my conversation, and then I will request you all to ask questions or whatever you want to express, and happy to take that from there. Okay. Does that make sense to us? Yeah.
Yes,
so I'm
yes,
just
absolutely.
yeah. So let me just take you. This is not the okay. What I want to then say is see the yeah. Share screen. So I think Jayanti ji, you mentioned Goldman, because something that is as complex as this needs to be broken into parts. And some of the easy parts for us to look at is, for example, self-awareness, right? In the moment to moment, as the feeling arises, am I even aware of what I'm feeling? And while this might seem very simple, I can tell you for sure it isn't as simple, because many of us, especially adults, have very limited language around emotions. At best, I can say I feel okay. At best, I can see I feel fine. At best, I can see I feel happy or I feel sad, right? But I think we have a much richer landscape of emotions. And I can take first baby steps towards becoming emotionally intelligent by starting to have names for this landscape. In English, there's a saying that you have to name it to tame it. So just having the language helps us to also deal with it. The second is self-regulation, right? And then this is something I've spoken about at length, that it is your ability to redirect disruptive impulses or moods as they happen, right? So anger, sadness, fear can be very, very overpowering, and they might lead me to just, kind of get in there, and that itself can be very, very damaging. And there is the need to control my impulse. While it is very, in the short run, it is very fulfilling to tell somebody exactly what you feel. In the long run, it destroys relationships. To recognizing that what works in the long run is not necessarily good for in the short run is something that, when I'm more emotionally intelligent, I have greater control over, right? I gulp it for now so that I can say it in a way to you when you are ready to listen, and I am more in charge of saying it, so that in fact we can actually have a conversation. I have already spoken about motivation. This is your knowledge, your self-awareness as to what is it that fills you. Yeah. And are you willing to capable of going and getting some of those fills, again, without being, without judging yourself, to be able to get there. And the fourth one, which is always easy to spell, more difficult to do, I can't live in an emotionally intelligent, want to live in an emotionally intelligent world without absolutely no awareness of the other. I need to be also aware of where the other person is. So for example, if you, let's say you were really worried because your spouse or your child had told you that they would come home at 8 o'clock, and it is already 9:30, and they are opening the door. And if you burst into your, anger and your worry, maybe they had something that was happening to them for a reason for which their face is long drawn, and rather than being empathetic to where they are coming from, if I end up doing this downloading, again, there's a break in communication. And I'm sure all of us have faced this at one point or the other in our life. And the fifth aspect is really about this ability to build relationships, even when they are not always going up, up, up. No relationships are perfect. They will always not give you a positive vibe. There are going to be positives and negatives. My ability to take both of them in the same stride helps me become more emotionally intelligent, right? So if I really want to develop this, I think I'm going to share with you some very simple strategies that help you work on it. I must say that, as I have already mentioned, cannot happen in a classroom or a workshop, irrespective of their length. These are habits, and habits rewiring, new habit formation is a personal project. And if you decide that I want to pay more attention, I want to be more authentic, I want to know what I'm feeling at the time I'm feeling, I don't want to be completely shaped by what has been told to me is the best way to express this emotion. If you really want to work on it, then these have to be personal projects, and they make small, you make small movements on it. And the moment you make a movement, you reward yourself and you go on and form a new habit. So it's possible, but they are personal projects. They're not something that can happen. Nobody can teach you like, teaching a bicycle or a car or something like that. I can hold your hand, I can teach you. No, I can tell you, you can understand it, you can become aware of it, and then you have to go home and you have to work on this as a project. So the first and foremost is take the time for mindfulness. Yeah, we all live really, really busy lives. We're running from here to there. And all of us need the ability to sometime take a pause and actually take the time for mindfulness. And I think even a short practice, even a 5-minute practice of mindfulness done anytime during the day helps you become more in touch with the here and now as the here and now is happening. So please put in a practice on mindfulness. You don't have to meditate for 4 hours to become mindful. You can even just start with a 5-minute breathe in, breathe out practice. Walk with intentionality. Look at everything that's happening around you. Just sit outside, just sit near a window and observe for 5 minutes the drama that happens in nature. All that helps you to be mindful, right? But it has to be a constant practice. I have said this already, you have to name it to tame it, build a list, improve your vocabulary of emotions, right? Google has more than 256 words on emotions. Download it, print it, keep learning the words and keep feeling them as they come to you when they come to you. No feeling is without a cause. Yeah, feeling is just not a random thing. There is something happening in the environment which is leading you to feel the way you're feeling. So if you really want to work on if you want to improve your emotional intelligence, focus on the cause, not on the feeling. Feeling is just an advanced signaling system, right? Signaling system for something else in the environment that is coming at you. And of course, every time you feel something, you don't need to take action, right? We are not the rat, we're not the dog, we are not all of that, that every time I feel scared, I have to jump and, do something. No, we have enough intelligence to say that even though this looks scary, I can stay my ground here. I can respond to this situation. Learning to be optimistic, right? If you constantly walk around thinking that the world is going to come to an end in the next 5 months or the next 5 days, or the world is no good and everything is bad and so on and so forth, no matter what happens in your environment, you're going to feel you have a heightened negative sense of feeling at risk. And therefore, you will be a lot more on the edge. Yeah. So again, both pessimism and optimism are learned. And I think it is important to learn to be optimistic. Yeah. So again, not that you're born a pessimistic, you're not born an optimist person, but you can learn to change the color through which you look at the world around you. So if I walk around wearing red glasses all the time, the world is going to look dangerous. And if I wear green glasses, the world might look a little more, natural and benign to me. So choose the glasses that you want to wear is what I'm trying to say. Anger is one of the most toxic emotions, because when it is expressed unedited onto the other person, it can really break a relationship. It can really, make things terrible. So it is important at that time to never to learn in your body when the anger starts to come in, and to do something to distract yourself so that you can feel it and then choose how you want to respond to it, right? You don't have to pay anybody for it, but there are people in your environment who you really love because of the way they respond to situations, the way they're mature, the way they're wise. Treat them as your mentors. And when you are in doubt, when you're fully pulled into, a certain response, a certain reaction, you can actually ask yourself, I wonder how Minal would respond to that. And you don't really know, you really don't know what Minal would do, but it gives you an option, and it gives you a pause, and it gives you a choice to respond differently. So have some people in your environment who you respect for how they respond to various situations. Outbursts help nobody. The more outbursts you have, the more stupid you look. Yeah. So, and we're all going to have outbursts. It's never to say that we will not have an outburst, but learning to have fewer and fewer of them makes for a good recipe for being emotionally intelligent. So when you can, feel that your body is getting ready to be seized and, kill the other person because now, they've had it, you need to be able to breathe, you need to be able to hold the chair, you need to be able to count to 1 to 5 and say, it looks like the end of the world, but I'm sure there is another way to deal with this. Yeah. And of course, no leadership, human kind of skill session can end without this one, which says you have to learn to develop listening skills. Yeah. Because when I listen to the lessons of the feelings, I listen to what is happening around me, I listen to things, I'm not flying off the handle. I have the ability to give myself the pause to respond to something. And I'm sure all of us have felt this at some point or the other. We have, been overcome by doubt or unworthiness or anxiety or sadness or fear or a broken heart. Somebody has really, pained you and so on and so forth. And at that point of time, to try to overcome it is like playing a tug of war with the monster. Yeah. And the more you try to say, no, I'm not anxious, the more it becomes bigger. Yeah. And the only way to actually deal with it is to say, yes, I am. At this point of time, I'm full of self-doubt. How long will you be in self-doubt? The power of that self-doubt is only as long as you keep holding to the rope. When you leave the rope, the self-doubt also goes away. And that it won't go away immediately, but it will not have that power on you. You will not resist it. It will not become bigger than it actually is, and you will be able to deal with it as you go along. Yeah. So let me stop here, and happy to take questions. But as I already said, that for each one of us, yeah, the most important thing is to realize that emotions are universal. They happen to everyone, the best of us and the worst of us. And the only difference is when I can really accept it, feel okay with what I'm feeling, and then choose how I want to respond to this, right? So let's look at some of the questions. Yeah. There is a question which says, there is an extensive guilt about expressing myself or probably feeling the negative emotions. These are all the stories that we tell ourselves. I'm not supposed to feel this way. How can I, of all people, actually feel this way, right? These are stories, they're not reality. And that story will cause guilt. Freud had said this, it is not a problem who you get attracted to. It is the guilt that you feel about who you get attracted to, which is the problem, right? So feeling attraction is a normal thing, but the guilt that I feel about feeling attracted can be worse. If I'm emotionally intelligent, I recognize that I'm attracted. I recognize that in this situation, even though I feel attracted, there is no two ways about it. I will feel I can be good friends about them with this person and leave it. But when I start to feel guilty about it, then I also start feeling angry about how come this person is attached. Look at how terrible his wife is. I'm making all these stories because at this point of time, I'm in a different space rather than the actual feeling of this. So yes, I think the guilt is a story. It is not reality. And as much as it is okay for you to express, I think it's also okay for you to let go of it with elan. This is what I feel. And I'm intelligent enough to know how to respond to this situation and not beat yourself up for feeling what you feel. Okay. Emotion and instinct.
Neharika ji, just one question. Sometimes being patient and quiet, do you think it is seen as a weakness?
I would say it is a weakness when I have not, in the best possible way, really expressed what I wanted to express. Right? So I was patient, I remained quiet, and I remained suppressed. Yeah. Or my view simply did not have a space. Then it will be a sense of weakness because they can walk over you. They can say whatever they want to say. But when I say it in a super aggressive form, then also it's a sign of weakness. She has no control over herself. I think the important thing is to say, I feel what I feel. And then in the right way, at the right time, to say to the person, this is unacceptable. This I'm not going to take from you. Or whatever, right? So in that sense, it's important for us to also state it, but in a way that the person hears and I don't become a lesser person as a result of it.
Thank you. That's a good one.
Neharika, there's one question earlier in the during the session, like this Ruchi, Dr. Ruchi, she's asked that she's a dermatologist by profession. She's always confused how to be an entrepreneur as well as a doctor at the same time.
Okay, so not really in this form, but yes, I'm happy to answer the question. I think, you know, we in the leadership domain, we often say that there is like two ends of a paradigm, right? On one hand, you are the professional. You are the one who's super skilled, are the best skilled at what you do. And on the other hand, it is about managing and leading the team or the business that you're running. And unfortunately, these two ends are not exactly the same. So you can't simply say that if I'm the best doctor, I'm also the best leader. You can't also say because I'm the best leader, I'm going to be the best doctor. Yeah. So it's a paradox. And I think like everything else, these have to be managed. Yeah. There is a space for me to be the best. And there's a space for me to build a context in which many other bests can thrive. Right? Because at the end of the day, I have limited energy, I have limited ability, and I have limited impact. If my trip in life is to create a larger impact, then I have to in some ways continue to do what I do well, but I also need to manage the other end where I create an environment where others who are also good have an environment to flourish. Yeah. So in fact, we often say it's a paradox, and paradoxes by nature can never be resolved. They have to be managed, continuously managed. Yeah. So for example, a good example of a paradox is breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in is wonderful. Breathing out is also wonderful. If you only breathed in, you would not be alive. If you only breathed out, you would not be alive. So you will need, and our bodies know exactly how to manage it. Same way, our minds have to learn to manage the paradox between being the specialist and the super, person and also creating an environment where others can flourish. Not easy, but doable. Lots of people do it.
There's one more question. Thank you. There's one more
Yeah.
question from Neha. Mindful brainstorming is very important, but how to concentrate on the suggestive inputs that we get in our instinct?
So instinct is what? Instinct is, I don't get an instinct from out of the blue. It's a trained only, I get an instinct for, let us say, how my class is going to go today. It's not out of the blue. I have enough and more experience to know how well prepared I am, who these individuals are, what will happen. And therefore, my instinct itself is based on, my deep experience of something. So I don't want to also lose that, because it didn't come just on its own. It came from a very large experience. And therefore, it's really important that I pay attention to my instinct. And sometimes my instinct is the one that is raising that heckle in me. Yeah. Can I pay attention to that heckle at that point of time? Yeah. So it's like something in the environment is telling me, you need to look further. You need to pay attention. It's not all okay. And that is what is being emotional intelligence, paying attention to it at that point of time. Comes from instinct, comes from environment, comes from anything, name it whatever. It's not the name that's important. It's the fact that there is a warning signal. There's a warning system. There's a question which says anxiety is not in our control. Exactly. It's not in our control. But you cannot be anxious all the time, because if it is a physiological reaction, whatever is in the body comes and ebbs. So if you let it be, after a while, it will go away. If you overthink it, if you over-control it, if you tell yourself, I can't be anxious, you only manufacture more anxiety for yourself. It's much better to say, yes, I'm anxious. And I'm going to wait for 5, 7, 8 minutes. And then that anxiety wears away, because it is a physiological reaction. It's a charge in the body.
There's one more question. Does aggression overpower calm and contentment? If you could please share it with an example.
Not so sure what the question means. I think these are different emotions that we have. We have calm, we have a state of contentment, we have aggression. For the same situation, I'm not going to feel the same, these all three things. In some situations, I'm going to feel calm. In some situations, I'm going to feel contented. And some I'm going to feel aggressive. And I think it's important for me to respond appropriately based on the situation that I'm in, rather than just say, yeah, somehow something else will take over. No, that doesn't work. That's trying to be a bit unnatural. It's like me I'm very angry and I'm smiling. Yeah. And I think I've fooled the world, but the world isn't fooled. And of course, my body isn't fooled. So better to be angry and say, I'm angry.
There's one more question. How to stop overthinking? Control overthinking.
Just stay with what you feel in the here and now. And believe, if you overthink, you will manufacture emotions. If you stay in the here and now, you will not overthink.
Neharika ji, sorry.
Yes.
Neharika ji, today's session has actually been an eye-opener. And I never thought that EQ is such a deep subject.
It is.
One question I had, I have small grandchildren. I have a 4.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And so just something just popped into my mind, that can we help children right from the beginning? I'm sure we can, to develop the right kind of EQ.
Absolutely.
Emotion.
Absolutely.
And how can we do that?
Actually, children are quite emotionally intelligent. They don't hide emotions. They feel it and they express it. I think what we where we go wrong as adults is we tell them you feel, but don't express it. Or we say, don't feel it, right? So somehow what is natural and instinctive in the child gets killed. And therefore, many times children who really think that they could have, children, if you notice really small children, if something hurts them, they'll cry. Yeah, adults don't like crying children, right? So they will say, "Arey, tum mat ro, ye apple kha lo, ye toffee kha lo. Why don't you watch this, cartoon at this point of time," and so on and so forth. So the child actually will do that, but when they're very young, after they've eaten the apple, they'll still cry because abhi unka wo expression khatam nahi hua of that emotion, right? But as adults, we tell them, don't think, don't feel, don't express. And we also tell them that when you feel something intensely, please eat something. Yeah, so as a result, many times adults will smoke, will drink, will consume drugs when they feel something intensely. So in fact, we are responsible for some of that. Yeah. So as adults, as educators, I think it's important for us to say you can feel, but also learn how you will express it. Not in an annoying way, not in a diminishing way, but in the appropriate way. That is what we can teach to our children.
There's one question in the chat box by Deepika.
Yes.
About avoiding a negative person vibes. Yeah.
Oh, when you get a negative person vibe, it's a very, it's your body's way of telling you need to pay attention. Yeah, it is your mind which is saying there is something about this person that ain't working for you. It doesn't mean that I have to ignore them, but I have to, at that point of time, put on a little bit of whatever defense I need to, so that I don't get hurt. Yeah, and I think that's why I'm saying it's an early signaling system for you. Yeah, so use that signal to help you to deal with that situation and not ignore it at that point of time. Or not say, oh, who is this person to make me feel this? It doesn't matter. You feel that way.
Thank you so much. I think we are at the end of the session. Any question last? We can take one more question. If not, then they're asking you for a social handle and updates.
Don't have one yet.
You need to create more. You're inspiring.
I need to. I need to. Thank you.
I think, Neharika ji, we might have to do a workshop with you.
Definitely.
Instead of just a 1 hour session.
Happy to.
Yeah.
So,
Minal. Yeah. Okay.
Minal,
so
you can share my email ID. You can share my email ID. Anyone can get in touch with me through that. Or maybe I'll just type it. It's very simple.
I'll share.
No, this one has decided to come and sit with me.
That's
so cute.
So cute. So thank you so much for being lovely audience, and thank you for giving me the opportunity, and happy to answer any questions or in any way that you might want to be in touch.
Yeah, we will mail it to you together. All right. So intelligence is a multifaceted concept. We all know that. What we mostly ignore is the importance of emotional intelligence. In other words, what matters is a different way of being smart. It's better to pause and then react. What an amazing session, Dr. Vohra. We have realized this even better. Today's session was an eye-opener in many ways, with enhanced clarity on EI. Why do we need as leaders, and practical tips being the key takeaways, and how to apply them in our everyday life. Thank you so much for those 9 pointers. They are excellent. On behalf of FLO and myself, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Neharika Vohra for being with us today and addressing us. It was really an amazing session. Thank you so much. I thank all the past presidents, GB members, and the governing body members, and everybody, pan-India, all the chapters who logged in, and we were almost 125 at one point of time, 140. So that's a great attendance for emotional intelligence. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our sponsors for the year 2022-23, Platinum sponsors KEI Wires and Cables, GHCL, associate sponsor Ardinox and Ahuja Sons. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Jayanti ji. Thank you, Ms. Dr. Vohra. It was great having you here.
Thank you.
Your presence was our privilege.
My
Thank you
privilege
so
as well.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. All the best. Thanks.
Good
Bye-bye.
evening. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We ended.